Trench Crusade. With the recent popularity of the Trench Crusade Kickstarter and all its recent articles and different people on YouTube covering it, I came up with an idea of making my own trench works, as everybody else has done. But I didn't want to build the traditional line trenches where you make giant squares or rectangles and you have a certain amount of straight sections and elbow sections and corners and things like that. I wanted to make it more modular, but I wanted it to be functional and open. So I created this tutorial. It's almost an hour, probably over an hour long, so it's my first tutorial, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. But also, I want everybody to look at the artwork of Mike Franchina and really soak in the world that you're creating. Now, you can have these ruins or trenches set wherever you want. I chose to set them on somewhere on the borders of some kind of old piece of the Holy Land in the desert sort of area that's possibly been blown to pieces, churned up with old mud and excess dirt, radiation, whatever's there. But you, of course, can stick to the traditional Western Front look artwork that you can see here. But we have seen some of the work that Mike has produced show that there are some desert-like areas. So that's what I chose. So that it was a little bit different than what you usually have. Of course, any of these techniques are just techniques. You could use them to create a Western Front style sort of trench. You'll just need to, of course, change colors and probably add some kind of water or something along those lines. Now, I will say that there's a certain amount of things you will need to begin with. One is, of course, you'll need a collection, in my case, of aluminium cans. They're very easy to come by. You can get a cube of them and you could, don't drink too many of them at once, but of course, just collect them over a couple of weeks. And you'll need, if you don't have access to the ability to cut them, or if you're underage, you need somebody's help, of course, seek that. And they are sharp, so be careful. You can also give them a little bit of a sand, which might make it easier for you to, paint them afterwards. Now, I will also say that you also will need, what I have is a roller to make them textured. So again, you could always just replace the aluminium cans with corrugated paper, which is easily gettable. It won't have the same principles as the metal when it comes to looking like real bent metal, but you can get close enough with paper. You don't have to do what I've done. These are all just ideas that anybody can do, and I hope you take away some inspiration from this, as I took inspiration from this particular piece of artwork. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So here is one of my first creations here. It's complete, as you can see. It's got all the rust and all the wooden damage and everything for it. So I just wanted to show that before we get started. So this is 5mm foam core. You can get it at pretty much anywhere. Here in Australia, we get it at a place called Officeworks, which they sell packs of it. And as you can see, I've cut up relevant strips. Now, these strips, again, are determined by the height of your miniatures, and what you're doing is just cutting them into small cards, or little blocks, if you will. As you can see, I'm just going ahead. And these blocks will create the height of your trench. And as I've said, it's up to you. Now, this Sally's glue, you see here, which is their wood glue, I believe, this thing sticks anything together. It's a lot stronger than PVA, and I really haven't had any problems with it. I'm not sponsored, but dries fast, and it's a lot better than your standard PVA. As you can see, I'm just getting it right on the edge there, and cleaning off the glue that I can, and this will create our corners. It's okay if it's a bit bumpy, because it's going to help that metalwork look like it's been just retrofitted into shape. So as you can see here, this is the finished section. It's all put up. It's a nice height, and you're going to get a little bit more height once you put the side paneling on it, but of course that's how it looks so far. And next we're getting out our lengths of aluminium foil. As you can see, I've given myself a reminder to say I sanded it. Rough sandpaper, doesn't matter. It's nice and flexible. Again, make sure you're safe. Now this is a special tool I 3D printed, and this is what you're going to need if you decide to make it out of actual aluminium, is this. It will corrugate the aluminium for you. I found this on Thingiverse. I had to go buy the bolts and the nuts for it, but it creates these corrugated sheets, and it's perfect for the job. And as you can see, nice little corrugated sheet. Standard scissors, nothing special about them. You can use tin snips if you don't want to destroy your scissors, but my fiance is what I'd say, loves to buy a lot of stationery, so we tend to have a lot of scissors sitting around, and yeah, so it didn't really matter to me. These are my hobby scissors. So just cut them up into sections that are roughly sort of the height of someone, and as you can see, I've done a full bag. This is next step. This glue is the bane of my existence. It is a very... It's good that it slides into all of the nooks and crannies to hold the things together, but it will glue my fingers together in any chance it wants. It's a liquid glue, which means it does work on the aluminium surface. As you'll see, it'll run into all the cracks and crevices and everything that you need it to, but it will glue to you. Now, one of the things I saw in some World War I recreations of trenches, which again, you got to do some research to see how you like your trench to look, is that they have two panels stacked on top of one another. And this is what I went with, so that it looked like somebody had designed this to not only cover a single person, a standard height, essentially. So, as you can see, I've doubled up by overlapping them, and that slight overlap gives you a nice border to hold in your dirt and earthworks that you'll later be putting into it. And it creates that nice edge that you can put a story into. And as you can see, I'm just making sure it's all glued down. And there you go. And of course, if you need to bend them, easily just bend them between your thumb, and you'll easily get these nice bends and weird shapes that you need. And put in as many as you want. These are the finished product. As you can see, it looks pretty battered and bruised already, just from me simply bending and flexing it into the shapes I need. Yeah, fingers are covered in glue. They went everywhere. It's just the name of the game. And now we're working with our wood pieces. Now, this is just balsa wood. I actually cut these from a sheet rather than lengths, so it looks slightly odd. They're not perfect lengths. If you do have perfect lengths, I would suggest doing as I'm going to do, is weather them up a little bit, get the little bit of whittling in while you're at it, take away the nice, perfect, clean corners, and you can see me here just getting rid of any excess off the top so it doesn't look odd when it's, looks more in scale as well. And then, here we go. We got the old wire brush. And straight to it, create those wood grain effects. Sorry about the shakiness of the camera. It's just how it goes on the desk. And again, you got to do all four sides. Even you don't think somebody might see it, but somebody will get close to it. They may see it. Sorry, that's you can what Adam Savage likes to call hide your crimes, but sometimes people spot them. I hide my crimes underneath the thing which you saw in the original the finished product with all the white underneath. And I'm rolling my fingers around it just to break away any... Yeah, you're not going to really be able to see... There we go. You see I've flecked away any excess and whatnot. You can see the wood grain. I'm glad. And again, I've done a few of them. It does take a while, you know. And again, using this glue. And what I'm doing is I'm letting the... If the glue spills over the edges, that's fine. The wood does absorb a certain amount of the glue. I'm letting it go. I'm letting it sort of run back underneath it. Here I go, double glue. Just letting it absorb in. And yeah, it's glued to my thumb. We've all been there. That frustrated moment. So probably on this work, there is at least my fingerprint in every single piece of terrain that I've made thus far for Trench Crusade. But I've hidden it. Again, hiding those crimes. And I quickly pop my finger away this time to make sure it doesn't get glued. Once it stops being a bit wobbly, there you go. As you can see, I've put them on to hide the edges and the gaps in between each sheet. And it just covers those nicely. Now our next part here is the creation of the section of destroyed rubble that's going to go on top. This again is just the same foam core. It's been chipped away at and everything to create a facade of some kind. Could have been a building, could have been a manufacturing station, could have been a church, whatever it is. And again, it's just pinned in place just to give it a bit of reinforcement. Nothing special. The special product here is this AK Interactives Terrain Concrete. I think there's two versions of it. This is the diorama version, and I think there's a hobby version. I don't know. I prefer this version. And what we're doing is creating the concrete look. And again, there are some World War I bunkers I would suggest you go online and look at. Lots of photos. Very easy to find. And yeah, as you can see, you just need to apply it like you'd apply it on if you had toast or something. And again, don't be worried about how it looks to begin with. The idea is just to get it on there, cover the surface. I should have put more metal pegs in the bottom just to make it easier to hold. But then again, you're learning from my mistakes just as much as I did. And don't be afraid to get in there and fill up all those little gaps. And or not those little gaps in the sense of the explosions, the little corners, as you can see on this building, has that I've created for myself. And as I'm doing right now is that a lot of these bunkers have these straight line striations in which they had built the concrete in levels. So what I'm doing right now is using this palette knife to just put it on and then pulling to the left and right in a horizontal pattern to create those striations. Now, you won't really see it because my lining is quite bright, but you will see them in the dry brushing stage of this tutorial, and it is quite effective. There you go, you're getting a nice view there. And what we're doing is that, just to create, oh, you can spot them here, create these striations that are in these buildings, and in effect, making it look like somebody built them. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. And here we go, we're just filling in the big explosion areas and everything, just getting a bit on the brush. You can wet the brush if you feel like it, and just get it into those nooks and crannies to create a rubble effect that you'll see on top. The rubble itself we're going to work on it here and put in some more details, and you'll be going around the whole thing. You can use your palette knife to clean off any of those excess bits you feel like need a little bit of cleanup. There's a good look at it, the completed lines as well. And here's it all dried up. Is any oh, here we go. Bring out the big tools now. Now you don't necessarily have to use a drill. I just use a drill to get through this aluminium and the foam core and concrete bit. And what we're doing is creating more of the story for this piece of terrain by drilling holes in it. This is a war, and we're going to definitely need a lot of bullet holes. Again, you can use a pin vise. If you've got a pin vise, it will be more effort. I had this drill. Again, if you don't get all the way through, that's fine. If you get all the way through, you create different designs. You can see here, I'm having some trouble. There we go. You just gotta be careful you don't poke your fingers. Safety first. And here you go. Here's the finished hole drilling. I can see the concrete's had a battering. That's why it looks the way it does. And all the steel and, or not steel, excuse the aluminium sections of the corrugated sheeting is all battered up. What we're doing here is, again, adding more detail. These are just bits of paper clips. You've probably got them in your house, or if you've got bits of wire, you can definitely use bits of wire. Getting the old pliers. And what we're creating is what I don't know if it's the same in other places in the world, is rebar. Just reinforcement bars that are put through concrete. They're, structurally speaking, they were in the trenches during World War One. They could be seen in a cross pattern, just a straight off square grid. But, this is a fantasy world. We're just doing whatever we feel like. You can do extensive square grid sort of stuff. You can use granny grading, as it's known. I've seen other people use that to create it, but this is it. Simply bend your wire into some funky shape. I'm trying to get it to focus, but there you go. And you know, just put it in place wherever you'd like it to be. Alright, and here's the final product here. All looking good. Again, if it doesn't necessarily look like a reinforced bar, it won't really matter. I usually create terrain to make it look interesting, not to make it super accurate. Now, moving on to this next stage, I must give credit to Midwinter Minis. This is the cracked coffee effect that they used for bases. I decided to use it for this terrain piece. And I would just say that if you're going to do this, at this stage, it's best to do this as sort of the last thing you're going to do for this for like a weekend. And you should let this thoroughly dry and see how it looks in about a week or something. And again, this coffee, for some reason I smelt it. I don't know why. I'm not a coffee drinker. This is from my fiance. Now, all this coffee again has been dried after coming out of coffee pods from a coffee machine, and then we ran it through a dehydrator for about 48, if not longer, hours, just to make sure it was had no moisture left in it whatsoever, because if there's any moisture, it will go moldy, and we want to avoid that, especially on our terrain. And again, mixing in the acrylic paint will help avoid it going bad as well. But again, in the situation that we're in here, you need to let this thoroughly dry for maybe a few days, if not a week, because the cracks will actually get bigger the longer you let it dry. By the end here, you're going to see a product that is starting to crack and is nice. I definitely would have to say that it cracked more after I'd left it for longer. And the finished product that I have now has more cracks in it. So you do that as you may, but I think you should leave it for a lot longer. And again, go for whatever color you like to mix into it. If you're going, you can just mix black into it if that's what you're going for. It's just so, you're not going to get, big white cracks in it or anything like that. The problem is that underneath, I should have painted it white. Should have painted it black, because some of the cracks you can see the white of the foam core underneath if you look hard enough. But there, it's what I gotta live with. I'm okay with it. But yeah, so do think ahead, and I would suggest painting underneath it. And the paint itself, everything on it should hold it down pretty well. If you feel like it needs maybe some watered down super glue or something, not super glue, watered down PVA to hold it down, you're welcome to do that after it's dried, I think. That would help. And again, that's it completely done. And as you can see, it's just a paste at the moment. It's starting to crack in that one. As you can see, I've left it alone, and you're getting quite a few cracks. Now, this was left alone for a night and a bit, I believe. As you can see, the t-shirt has changed, and I wanted to get to this part to leave it to dry overnight. So we're getting a few cracks, and now we've got the undercoat, which is just your classic black with a zenithal highlight. This was done through an airbrush, and you can see all those cracks pop up now. So it's looking great. So the next section here is all painting, and if you do want to follow along with the painting and see how I go through all the sort of grim dark rust effects and stuff, you're welcome. But most of this, rest of this is going through just simple painting techniques. Nothing extensive. There will be some little effect things about how to get, say, the water, using dirty down rust, and using some different paints to get different looks, and using the zenithal undercoat to create effects. For instance, I'm gonna paint this stone, but I'm using the water in this paint to create a thin enough layer so that I'm still going to have some of these highlights showing through, and it definitely cuts down on the amount of time that I will need to paint and so on. As you can see here, it's actually pretty thick, to tell you the truth. Oh, am I wrong? No, here comes the water, yep. Yeah, as I said, nice thin layers, and this will keep this zenithal highlight coming through. And that's the grey all painted up. Again, this is your basic grey, nothing too hard. Do it as dark as light as you want. Coming in with our metal, I use the, as you can see here, the Vallejo air metal. It's quite thin, it's already been thinned to go into the airbrush. I think yep, here comes the water. I'm going to thin it even more. Just to get it to a consistency, just to be, I don't know, usable. You might have to do 2 coats if you are going to do this. And again, we're just covering that aluminium. We're going to make it look pretty buggered up by the time we're done here. But we're just getting a nice coat down for now. Just to create something looking more like metal. And that's all that metal done. Don't be afraid to slide the brush under those wood posts as well and just get under there. Because we're going to come in there with, again, you need some water. Got the old Mando and Grogu glass, which is my painting glass when I'm on the move. Now this is Gorgrunter fur, I believe. Yes, Gorgrunter fur from Contrast from the Citadel range. I've got 2 of them, as you can tell, because I was running low. What we're doing here is we are, I believe for this case, we're painting the wood. One thing I like about contrast paints too is that for what they are, a little bit of it goes a long way. As you can see, I'm getting a lot of it out, but I am going quite Gonna do a lot of these posts, and I didn't need that other glass, but I always make sure I have, if I'm doing a big project like this, always make sure you have a couple of them, especially if you're going near the end of a glass. Yeah, you can see here a lot of water in it. It's okay to water it down. A lot of water. Yep, and I'm doing the posts. Again, the zenithal highlight has made all that striations in that wood grain come up, so we want to keep that. So, yeah, a nice thin coat of it. And again, you've got to do a lot of the posts. So, again, this is about time as well. A thin coat of it on a warm day or a nice day with the window open, you'll get a nice quick drying time and you can move on quite quickly. I think this was a fairly warm day, so you'll see me go on to pretty much get this all completed. I believe this full thing was done in one day, from the zenithal highlighting to the painting. And there we go. Now with the old paper towel out, that means we're coming in for some dry brushing. Again, just the cheap acrylic white that I had. I think it looks like that grey might even still... Yeah, the grey is still wet on that palette from all the water. And you've all done dry brushing. If you haven't, then you can easily find tutorials. There is tons out there. It's a simple technique. There's some masters at it. Artist Opus is an absolute master at using dry brush to create all kinds of effects, so I would suggest checking out his channel. But yeah, simple thing of getting some paint on your brush. First of all, you got to make sure this brush is dry. Oh, as little damp doesn't hurt, but I've got my small makeup brush here. Soft, bristled makeup brush. Straight in. And we're going to just pick up all those nice lines that we molded in that concrete when we first did it. Is me trying to do too much with one hand. There it is, and now we're on to the ground. Now this is again using Gore Grunter fur, Deathclaw brown, and Ungor flesh. This is again, another technique. I've watered these down extensively, and I'm just going to slap them down here and there. I start with this Gore Grunter fur, excuse me, And while it is still wet as my main colour, just get it everywhere. And now get that Deathclaw and pop it in. Get some Ungor flesh and pop that in too. What we're doing is we're creating that deserty colour, that really strange, off-putting desert colour that I have. That this is not necessarily a safe standard desert, and it's again going back to the inspirational image of that priest on top of that tower calling out to all those holy warriors. That kind of ground was this orange yellow, and it wasn't necessarily a desert that is recognizable, but this could be, that could be all kinds of stuff on the ground. It's not just sand, dirt, mud. Could be blood. Could be phosphorus. Could be anything. Could be yellow clay. And here's another technique that we're going to use. We're going to use some oils to get the level of contrast that I'm after. Again, I've been researching into oils more and more extensively lately, especially when it comes to miniature painting, and using them on terrain was where I started, because it just covers more than your standard bottle of shade. You're going to end up with far more usage and far more coverage with a stick of oil paint than you would with a bottle of any shade. As you can see, a little bit goes a long way. I only plucked off a little bit. I'm mixing it in with some odorless spirits here. And again, that was just a easy store-bought one, and we're just tapping it on. Its capillary action will cover the concrete parts here quite easily. As you can see, it just washes down and creates a very nice effect of this pooling black, whatever it could be. It's gunfire dust, it's dirt, it's, death from possibly 100 years, if not more, just turned to soot. It could be anything on these. And that's what I love about these pieces of terrain, is that they tell a story. And this is the part I enjoy the most. The building part is great, but the painting part, where you get to put these little stories in that other people can see, it's, again, why I enjoy art and what inspires me to create these things. And I hope it's inspiring you, and I hope my waffling isn't too annoying. And again, I'm focusing on bullet holes as well, making sure that there is some darkness in there in case that some of the white of the original color doesn't show through. Just be careful though, because this will melt. Direct contact with actually, I don't think the odorless spirits is as bad as some of the hardest spirits, or the actual white spirits I've used, but these odorless spirits are far more forgiving. But if you use complete white spirits, that's not an artist version, it might melt the foam core. So just be careful out there. Check your brands. It's good to know. And now we're coming in with the sponge. Now, it may seem a bit dark in some areas, but this is why we're taking away some of it. We want it just to sit in those pooled areas. I would also suggest wearing gloves while you're doing this if you don't want your fingers stained black for a little while. But yeah, you want this to sit in the darkest areas and let that dry brushing pop back out again as we're bringing the colour back out. You can dab it, you can wipe. Just be careful with the wiping. If you are going to use it, you can pull back some of the acrylic, so just be careful. Don't be too rough with it. These are just your store-bought cheap makeup sponges. I chop them up with scissors and they make great little things like this. But again, leave this to dry. It may take 24 hours or more. Now, another secret tool, AK Interactive Dark Mud. Again, this would be great for using both for desert. Again, got the odorless spirits there. But again, you get good for using for desert and European style terrain. It is mud. It will effectively work. And there's always a little bit on the top of the lid. Don't let that go astray. This is just neat. Straight from the bottle to begin with. And we're just smearing it here and there. And then getting that spirits on there. And what we're doing here is filling those nooks and crannies, as I said, that may appear to pop up. Make those cracks definitely pop. But as I said, this piece of terrain kept cracking after the fact, so there is some white spaces in it, which is why I'm suggesting let it dry for about that coffee grounds. Let it dry for a little bit longer than what I did. You know, work on it for a weekend, get to the coffee ground bit, do a whole bunch of it, let it sit for a week to dry. By the next weekend, you should be able to move on. But yes, I'm still pretty happy with it, as I've said. But that's it. Again, getting the sponge in there, and we're just taking away all the sort of high pools of it. We want it just to sink down into the earth and give us that dark cracks and broken bits here and there. It also darkens up the ground a little bit, so it's not that sort of really bright orange. And you see me coming in here. I think I'm doing the wall. Adding this, of course, dirt and making sure it was pulling at the bottom of it is important, because that will create the lived-in feel of the dirt, getting it in these cracks and crevices. As I said, I use this product extensively. It's a great product. The Dark Earth, or Dark Mud, excuse me. With this unifying wash too, you're going to get everything on the same page. It's really good. It just brings all these parts together, and after it's all dried, of course, we'll get into more of the effects and starting to bring in rust and damage and so on. But yeah, you're just going to put this everywhere. I do mean everywhere. Always good to clean up your own mess. Again, making a mess just means you're working correctly, I think. And you can see we're going to move on to doing all the wood and all the metal. It's just a quick slap on, and we just give it a wash with that thinned out spirits, and then again pat it off to leave all the dirt and, well, all the mud and all the grime in between all the effects, and also focus on the bullet holes as well. And yeah, we'll just have to leave that to dry. Again, depending on your day, you can dry it with a hairdryer. It will dry off. As you can see, it's not. It looks like it's fully dry, but it might not be down the bottom there. Oh no, it is. It's fully dry. Excuse me. Again, I think it was a very hot day, and I just put it outside. Now we're coming in with nylon oxide, as you can see. If it will focus, there we go. Technical paint you can get anywhere. The good thing with this is that we're trying to, we have extensively watered it down, I'll first say that, and we're trying to give the metal more feeling, more life to it, and again, much like with anything here, we're putting it on and just letting it go. And then we've got our little makeup sponge thing here, you can use a paper towel even, and we're just dabbing it off. Now, because of the surface has got that oil on it, it's going to come up all splitchy and splotchy and gives you this effect that this metal has lived. It has seen some weather, which is what we wanted. And it definitely comes looking up great. Now, this is a technique I saw from Lockie over at Zorbazorb. You'll take Typhus Corrosion and Agrax Earthshade, or you can use any sort of brown wash you've got, but definitely Typhus Corrosion is the main The main selling point here of this technique is to create grit and grime on the metal parts that can be picked up when we're using the rust effects. And in this case, we're also creating dirt and lived in energy. Well, not energy, lived in texture, excuse me. And again, this is just the two of them mixed together. And you can see I heavily watered it down, and now I've got both of them together and getting in between those little cracks and crevices, and then building up on the bottom there and checking those bullet holes, getting them, making them look like they've had stuff dripping out of them. It's just a nice technique to add something to it. You don't necessarily have to dab it away. What I'm doing is just blending out the edge, just so it doesn't look like it's just been painted on. You could do the same thing if you wanted to with water and blend it out a little bit more. I've gone back again here. Maybe again, depends how you feel. Double it up if you want. But you'll see me go around this whole thing, and I'll also work on the bullet holes, I believe on the concrete as well, if I do remember. So yes, I was correct. I do work on these bullet holes again, just putting it in the hole and then wetting down my brush and creating drips and running filth, because this place has seen everything under the sun. Demons, monsters of every type. You could throw blood splatter on these if you feel like. I didn't go as far. Focus, come on. You're not going to focus, are you? Oh, there we go, right at the end. And here comes the champion, Dirty Down Rust. It's another piece of equipment for any hobby arsenal. Again, you can see all the metal work and stuff's been done now. It's all dried up. You can see that big crack there. I think it got a little bit bigger after it completely dried. And Dirty Down Rust here is like, I've had that bottle has lasted me almost 2 years now. So it's a quite a product that goes a little bit goes a long way. You know, a little Cobra Venom goes a long way in this case. And I'm watering it down. Dirty Down Rust is easily one of the best products you can use to create effects, and I will definitely shout its praises. In this case, I am using it to create the rusted, lived-in effects on top of all that texture we created, and the battlefield grime that we've put there and so on. It could be too much. If you feel like it's too much, you can always back off some of these things if you so wish. But this is what I went with. I wanted it to look like it was hell. And that's kind of what we're going for in this game. I will say too about Dirty Down Rust is that if you let it dry for a little bit, it will become chunkier and you'll get some nice big chunks of rust that you can stick in places. And the drier it'll get, the more tackier it will become. So there's nice tutorials out there. I think other people have done extensive ones. I haven't, but look out for them. But as I said, the longer that it dries on the palette, you'll get different effects. Now here's a technique you don't necessarily have to do. Now this is just a watercolor pencil. I've left it soaking in fresh water. What I wanted to do was I wanted to add dust. Now you can use this with, I think AK Interactive and some other places have pencils that actually do this, but as long as you got watercolor ones, you can do it. You can use whatever, browns, whites, greys, whatever you'd like to do in the way of dust. In this case, I wanted to bring just a smidge of orange back in. As you can see, I am definitely watering it down extensively, and I come in with the wet brush and then brush it out, and it just brings in this nice pop of orange that I really, really liked. Again, if you're not wanting to follow on with this, just pick another color. You know, watercolor pencils, I'm sure somebody's got some. Don't steal them from everybody. But this came from a big Faber, I don't know, whatever brand it was, set that I have. So I got an extensive set of essentially all of these. But yeah, go check them out. And they are a really good another technique for the box that you've not really using. And they're good to add. I think I like them a little bit more than using weathering pastels and things like that. I just think they just have a little bit more control to them. And when they're dry, they dry a lot quicker, of course, and you don't need some kind of medium to hold them on. They're exactly like paint, except they're, again, watercolor, so your mileage may vary when it comes to its effectiveness. But this is the last step. And after this, you're going to see some beauty shots. So I definitely want to thank you. And I hope this extensive mad ramble will be at help to some of you. But I must say, thank you very much.